Welcome, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. And by the way, I might as well do a little sales pitch. We can make those pad mount units in maroon, too. So we'll work on that for you. There's greatness in this room. Let me repeat. There is greatness in this room right now. I can't pinpoint it. I don't know you well enough. I don't know if it's a person or perhaps a group of people. I can't define it. I don't know if it's an event, something that will happen. But I know one thing for sure. There is greatness right here within this room. How many of you know Muhammad Ali? Well-known boxer, had a following around this world that was incredible because he fought pretty much in every country that you can think of and then some. During his time of his prime, everybody looked at him as the greatest because he said he was. Remember the saying, I can float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, there will be none that will be greater than me. Muhammad Ali on one particular trip was coming back. He had won another one of his championship bouts. He was sitting in the front of a first-class seat on an airplane riding back. Face was a little bit puffy. And this flight attendant came up to him and said, sir, we need you to put your seatbelt on before we take off. Muhammad Ali, I think at the time, 6'4", weighed 260 pounds, leans forward with an intimidating look and says, Superman doesn't need a seatbelt. Now, on the other corner, I would say, actually it was the aisle of the plane, the flight attendant, standing at 5'6", weighing in at 124 pounds, leaned forward, nose to nose with Muhammad Ali and said, Superman doesn't need an airplane either. Who defines greatness? Who defines your greatness? I guess I should probably start a little bit by just telling you my story, where I've come from, and give you an idea about what I think this group of people here is going to probably experience in their lifetime. From the time I was 2 to the time I was 22, all I wanted to do was be a Major League Baseball player. That's all I lived and dreamed to be. I thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. Matter of fact, I had every indication that that was going to happen. Out of high school, I was drafted by the Chicago White Sox to play professional baseball. But I didn't think I was good enough. So I said no. After my first year in college, in junior college in Florida, I was drafted a second time by the Chicago White Sox to sign a contract. But I didn't think I was ready. So I said no. After my second year in college, the Chicago White Sox drafted me a third time. The newspaper article said, White Sox persistent in trying to sign this guy. But I thought I would take the safe route. And I said no a third time. The safe route was, let's go get an education. And quite honestly, it worked out pretty well. Came here to Mississippi State. It's so great to be back here and see the change that goes on here. We did very well. I was a team captain. I was the most valuable player. Every indication continued to say, your dream is going to come true. We participated in the College World Series for a national championship. I had agents calling me up saying, let me be your agent. I'm going to sign you to the big Major League Baseball contract. When we were done with the College World Series, I came back to what is MacArthur Dorm. It used to be an athletic dorm. It's something different now. And I sat there while the draft was going on, waiting to see which team now was going to draft me to play. I'm ready to play professional baseball right now. The phone never rang. I tried out and played with the Minnesota Twins for a while, put in a year. I was married at the time. My honeymoon was in Omaha, by the way. That's a whole different story. My wife is still letting me remember that. But one day the coach brought me in and he said, we're sorry. We don't need you anymore. We're letting you go. I knew then that my baseball career opportunities were over. But that's okay because I had plan B set up. I was going to be a CPA. I was going to hang a shingle on a roof and put my name on it and have my own firm. How do you do that? Well, I was told that if you go take this Becker CPA review course, you're guaranteed to pass this exam. Well, back in the days, the only place that they had it was on the other side of Florida. I lived on the East Coast, so every Saturday morning I would get up at 4 o'clock, drive 3 hours, take a 10-hour class, and drive 3 hours back every Saturday for 26 weeks. Took the test, waiting for my results, thinking that things are going to happen great. 3 months after the test, I get the envelope. We didn't have email back then. I get the envelope in the mail. I open it up. The Department of Regulation hereby notifies you, Robert Stephen Kocol, regarding the CPA exam, you have failed. 26 weeks. I go to the fine print. I read the fine print. It says, but those that take the class the second time, 80% pass. Road trip. Get up at 4 o'clock on Saturday morning, 3-hour drive, 10-hour class, 3-hour return trip, 26 weeks again. Wait 3 months, get the grades, open the envelope. Robert Stephen Kocol, you have failed. It took me 3 years and 3 times to pass the CPA exam. But by that time, I had other interests and I didn't want to do it anymore. I climbed the corporate ladder. I was very fortunate to the point where one day, finally, in a career, I get the opportunity to be a CFO of a public company, a $2.5 billion company. What an opportunity. But the inner voice that each one of you have, it's your own inner voice, started to speak to me saying, Bobby, you can't do this. You couldn't become a Major League Baseball player. It took you 3 times to pass the CPA exam. You've never been to Wall Street. My goodness, you didn't go to Harvard or Princeton or Yale. You went to Mississippi State. You can't do this, Bobby. But I remembered the 3 no's, that I would never say no again. I took the job. I mean, what could go wrong, right? The company had just made $100 million. What could go wrong? Second day on the job. I'm with the CEO. In comes the head of engineering. Boss, and I looked at this guy, and as I said to his class earlier today, this guy had the Houston, we have a problem face. We got a software glitch in the product. We're not going to be able to ship for 6 months. Whoa, wait a minute. We're supposed to be shipping now. We're not shipping for 6 months. Well, can we go back and ship the old product? No, we shut that line down. It'd take 6 months to build it back up. First year. $100 million in profits or $200 million losses. We got sued by a competitor in a patent infringement case. We lost. Treble damages. $100 million. Our stock, from the day I started as the CFO at $40, dropped to $8 a share. We had 100 million shares. You guys are very smart. You can do the calculation. That's over $3 billion in market cap drop. What a great first year as a CFO of a public company. Now, my story may be unique to me, but it is a common story that all of you have. And here's why. Everyone that's in this room starts with, I want to do, my aspirations. And every one of us are going to have the end result, which is achievement, which is what I actually do. This is what I want, aspirations. This is what I do, achievements. That's the commonality. But the uniqueness to the story that you're writing for yourselves, every one of you, is this. In between, there's a bridge that needs to be gapped. And that's called adversity. That's what we're here to talk about a little bit today. To give you an idea about what you're going to be facing. Okay, there are 3 phases that you're going to go through as you either build your business as an entrepreneur or you build your career inside of a corporation or company. The first thing is you get to a point where you think something's going to happen. You think something's going to happen. You got to get out of this stage first. I thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. It didn't work out. I thought if I could pass that exam if I took that course. That didn't work out until forever. I thought the first year as a CFO was going to be great, and it wasn't. Now, what do you need to do to get out of this stage? The first thing, the letter I, identification. Who are you? Who are you? You get to define who you are. You know, there's a lot of things in life that we cannot control. We don't control our parents. We don't perhaps control the teachers who we get. We don't control our bosses. We don't control whether we're 6'5" or 5'6". We don't control the circumstances that we will face in life or the tragedies that will come our way. But there are some things that we do control. We get to control who we are. That's your character. That's who you are. Identity theft, last time I looked, affects 15 million people a year. $50 million is confiscated through identity theft a year. People can take your identity from that perspective. They can take your assets. They can take your money. They can take your tangible property. But the one thing they cannot take is who you are. Who you are. Know who you are. In your career, you'll have to answer that question. Know going in who you are and what you stand for. The second part of it is marketability. Who will you become? In your careers, whatever you do, you got to realize every one of you is going to come out of here with a great degree. But you know what? You might be facing each other in an interview process. And as an employer, I'm going to ask you, somebody's going to ask you, why are you different from you? You have to find ways to differentiate yourself. You have to determine how you're going to be different. Who are you going to become as a person? Studies of older people on their last days and their last years of their life were, what's the biggest thing that you regret in life? And you know what their answer is? I wish I'd had the courage to live the life that was true to myself, not what others expected of me. And also a top 5 answer is, I wish I would have taken more risks. Those are top 2 in almost every survey I've seen about regrets. It's not something that they did that they regret, it's something that they didn't do. It wasn't like, I wish I wouldn't have taken the candy bar from the store or put Vaseline in Grandpa's underwear or something like that. No, it was something that they didn't do. I didn't take enough risk and I didn't live the life true to myself. You know, you're going to get into the working world and you got to get out of this phase where it's nothing but I'm going to put in my hours, my 40 hours a week. I'm going to go home on the weekend. I'm going to eat and drink too much and I'm going to pay my rent. Life is more to that. One of the things that you're going to face in your lifetime as you go forward is this. There's a lot of negativity that you're going to hear. Woe is me. This is terrible. It's not going to work. You can't do it. You can't invent it. Your product will never make it. Nobody will want to buy it. There's a lot of negativity. What you're going to hear a lot of out there in your lifetime is this. And you have to be able to push that aside. A lot of the talk is going to be about your limitations as opposed to your potential. Flip that. Make sure you're always thinking about your potential as opposed to your limitations, because that's what you're going to hear. Most people don't want to progress. You want to be one of those that does. By the way, there are 3 types of people. There are people that make things happen. There are people that watch things happen. And then, of course, there are people that don't even know anything is happening. What you want to do is be a person that makes things happen. Identification. Who are you? Marketability. Who will you become? Okay. Now, the key, though, is we need to find ways to get out of the thinking something can happen, to get into the believing something can happen. Now, what's it going to take to believe something's going to happen? 2 points. First one, I believe it's very important. Preparation. Master the fundamentals of whatever trade that you have. It has to become secondhand. It has to be, I have practiced, I have worked, I have studied, I have researched, I have analyzed, I have done everything I possibly can. I am mastering the fundamentals in my trade. Because this is true. Hope is not a plan, but a plan can give you hope. Remember that. Hope. I hope I get that job. I hope I get that promotion. I hope my business works. I hope. Hope is not a plan, but a plan can give you hope. How do you plan? You prepare. Master the fundamentals of your trade with relentless preparation. Because each and every level that you take a step up is going to become more difficult. The numbers get against you when you go forward in your career. The likelihood of you failing gets higher. If you're one of 10 looking for a job, you got a 10% chance of not happening. If you're down to the last 2 and you're one of them, you got a 50% chance of not happening and getting the job. 5 million little leaguers hit the fields every year. Guess how many make it to the major leagues? 100. That means for every 50,000 little leaguers on the field this summer, only one makes it to the major leagues. Last time I looked, IBM had 380,000 employees, one CEO. Walmart had 2 million employees, one CEO. There's 325 million citizens in this country, one president. It all goes to the top. It's a pyramid. And as you go up those levels, it gets harder. You have to master your fundamentals in your trade. Have to. And the second one is, this helps you to start to believe that you could do something, is accountability. That's the A. Accountability. You have to own your career. If you think that your employer is just going to help you all along, all the way, it's not going to happen. Own your career. There was one time where I had moved from Florida out to Colorado, and I took on this job, and I had a consciously, and I would suggest this, build your resume. Every 2 to 3 years, do something different. Add to your resume. And I had gone to Colorado, and the first year gets passed, didn't miss a heartbeat. We did a lot of improvements, did very well, moved a family, 2 kids, the only 2 grandkids my wife's parents had. My name was Mud, but I still did it anyway. After that year, I went to my boss, and I said, okay, what am I doing next? We did very well the first year. Let's go. What am I doing a year from now? He says, I'll tell you what. Come back and let me think about it, and let's come back to me, and we'll talk about it again. So I waited about 6 months. 6 months I come back. I'm 18 months in the job. Hey, boss, what are we going to do? What am I doing? What's my next job? I want to do something else. I want to take on more responsibility. He said, forgot it. Come back and see me in about 3 months. Here I come 3 months later. Now I'm 18 months into the job, 21 months into the job actually now. I said, boss, we said we're going to get together. 21 months, I'm 3 months away from my next annual review. What are we going to do? I want to do something different. He says, I'll tell you what, your review's so close for the next year. Let's just do it then. 24 months comes up. I wasn't there. 6 months later, I got a phone call. Hey, we got this opportunity for you to be vice president of the whole worldwide sales force. You want to come take that job? In 6 months, they called me back. 6 years later, I was the CFO of the company. My point is this. Own your career. Take it upon your shoulders because you have to look out for yourself. By the way, your boss is looking out for himself or herself as well. So you have to think about how you're going to be able to own your particular career. Which brings me to the next point. Is it better to set the bar for what you do low so that you can make it? Or is it better to set the bar for what you want to try to accomplish high and miss it? Think about that. Set it low, make it, look good. Set it high, miss it, but stretch yourself to a point that you learn and you discern what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Which one's better? I think the latter one is where you get most out of it. The first thing you have to do is you got to raise your bar. Where is your bar? But raise it. I got a real hard lesson on this one time from one of my bosses. For a year, I had accomplished what I thought was a lot. I mean, I was able to secure a $500 million, $500 million loan. I got approved a $1 billion stock buyback program with the board of directors and the shareholders. I had a strategic plan that I orchestrated to help put the company on a roadmap that was undoubtedly going to create value in the company. And I finally get my annual review, and I'm walking into my boss, and I'm saying, look at what I'm doing. It's time to talk about our performance appraisal. And I'm like, hey, boss, look what I've done. And he just looked at me. And I'm saying, well, you asked me about my accomplishments. Look what I did. And he looked at me and he said, well, what do you think I'm paying you to do? I was so mad. I came in there with the big chest thinking I was going to get a bowing out my chest, thinking I'm going to get a big raise and a promotion. He says, what do you think I'm paying you to do? I went home, kicked the cat, yelled at the wife. But then I realized what he was after. What he was after was this. That's your job. That's the bar you have. I'm here to raise it. I'm here to raise it. Always be looking at how you can raise your bar. And while that's important that you do that for yourself, what's also important is this, that you share that bar. What do you mean? Story. Farmer wins up in the corn country. Every year, his farm, he produces the best quality corn. He always wins the contest of who's got the best quality corn. He gets interviewed. The interviewer finds out that what this farmer does is he actually shares his seed corn with his neighbors and his competitors. He goes, what are you doing that for? You're in a competition. Why would you share your corn, your seed corn, with your neighbors and those of you that are competitors? He says, you don't understand. What do you mean I don't understand? You think about it. The wind picks up the pollen when it's ripe, and it swirls it from field to field to field. Over time, if my neighbor grows inferior corn, cross-pollination will steadily decline my corn. Therefore, if I am going to grow quality corn, I have to help my neighbor grow quality corn. What's the message? If you want peace in your life, help somebody else have peace in their life. If you want to be happy, help somebody else be happy. If you want to be successful in your career, be successful and help others be successful in theirs. Determine where your bar is, raise your bar, share the bar. It's not all out. This is not a world where it's me, and my. It might be, but if you want to be successful going forward, you have to help others be successful as well. Okay? And finally, the last one is, you think you can make something happen, then you get to a point where because of preparation and accountability and ownership, you believe it can happen, but there's a faith component in that. The stage that you need to get into, those of you who are going to start a business or those of you who are going to try to get into the corporate world and work up that ladder, you got to get to a point where you know something can happen. Now, do you know what I mean when I say you need to know that you're there? You know, when the profits that I explained earlier plummeted, share price plummeted, the shareholders were after us. They were saying, you need to sell this company. Newspaper articles were being written. I remember one in particular. I still have it. I'm kind of weird in a little bit that way. Newspaper articles. I remember one in particular. Said from the investors, I have no reason to believe nor have any faith that this management team can turn this company around. My daughters were both in high school at the time. You can imagine that in a local paper. Isn't your dad one of those bozos over there? Isn't he one of that team? Not easy. But it's one thing to see the professional side, but then there's the personal side. Be ready for it. Because while all that was going on, there was an 18-month period that personally, 3 of my family members diagnosed with cancer. All 3 lost their battle. You know what? Aside from the network that you need to develop of support with your family and your friends, or perhaps it's a spiritual support system that you have. Aside from that, I don't know how you get through that adversity. I am not an expert. It's all within yourself. I don't know how you get through the failures and how you get through the disappointments and how you get through the losses. I don't know, other than a good support system will help you to do that. But inevitably, you will be faced with that. And it typically comes at the worst time that you would expect it to happen. When that happened, I went to the CEO. And I walked into his office and I said, I can't take this anymore. I'd worked 365 days a year. I was living off of 3 hours of sleep. I was traveling 150,000 miles in the air, dealing with shareholders that were nasty. And I finally went to him. And I said, I got to quit. I resigned. He says, you can't. I said, yeah, like heck I can't. I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to resign. He says, you can't. I said, why? He said, because I already did. And you can't have a CFO and a CEO of a company, with a troubled company in particular that's a public company, leave at the same time. We just can't do that. Those days will come. But the lesson that I want you to take out of this, as you go through your career and as you develop your business, is this. The pain that you go through is temporary. Quitting is permanent. When you want to get to that stage where you know you're going to make something happen, unfortunately, you're going to have to go through something like I just explained that I went through. And when you go through that, you find out how committed you are. That's the C that I'm talking about in impact. You find out how committed you are because quitting is permanent. Pain is temporary. It might be a day, it might be 10 days, it might be a year, it might be 10 years. I don't know, but it is temporary. Don't quit. Don't quit. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you is this. You got to have fun. You got to seek the thrills in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's in a corporation or if it's a business that you're trying to start. Seek the thrills in what you're doing. That company that we had, over the next 6 years, we did everything we possibly could to restructure the company. We looked at every weak process and we changed it. We looked at every deformity, we got rid of it. We looked at people that didn't want to perform, they're out the door. 6 years later, the company sold for $4 billion. It worked out. Was I lucky? No. You get to that point where you know something can happen because you fix it. You know what that does to you? You start to feel it. It's called momentum. When you fix a process and you know you fixed it and things are working, you start to feel it. When you start to feel it, you start to do different things. You start to take risks. I remember I was on a plane flight from New York to going to LA. And I'm on the plane. I just come from a tech conference. I was on a plane, and I was going to go talk to our number one shareholder who had lost a lot of money, but things were starting to turn around. And I'm not a technical guy. Okay? But I came out of that conference with every buzzword you can imagine. And so I go into this room, and there's 12 people around me. And I start talking about what was going on with the conference, acting like I knew what I was talking about. I started talking about SRAMs and DRAMs and ZRAMs and DRAMs. I started talking about exabytes and yottabytes and petabytes. I brought out neuromorphic architectures. Doesn't that sound cool? I don't know what it is, but I kept saying these terms because I was trying to impress the number one shareholder. And then I finally said, the one that I really loved, I said, and you know what, as we start to talk about our designs in the future, we're going to have to consider the super paramagnetic effect. They didn't know what I was talking about, but they couldn't admit it because they'd invested so much money in the company. To one kid in the very back, the kid that they told to go get donuts and coffee said, would you please explain to me what super paramagnetic effect means? I had no clue. I had no clue. I didn't think I could answer them. I didn't believe I could answer them. And I know I needed to get out of there as soon as possible, which I did. But the point is when you start to get that momentum, you start to become loose. And when you're loose in what you do in your job and when you're creating your business, you become more creative. When you become more creative, you become more confident. When you become more confident, you get to the point where I've been through enough that I know this is going to work. That's the stage that you want to get into, is know that this will work. Seek the thrills. And finally, you fix it, you feel it, but never fear it. And I'll close with this. There was a soldier, perhaps you've heard this, Johnny Coleman's story. I love this story. Johnny Coleman told me this story. He said, there was a soldier that was captured behind enemy lines. And the sergeant of the guard came up and said, you have a choice, soldier. You either face the firing squad or you go through that door over there marked unknown horrors. The firing squad here or go through the door marked unknown horrors. The soldier was captivated. He knew he was in trouble. He had to make a decision. He said, he looked at the firing squad. He looked at the door. He looked back at the firing squad. He looked at the door and he says, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Give me the firing squad and end it. And they executed him. They dragged him off. One of the sergeants underneath comes to the one that was in charge and he said, sir, what's behind that door marked unknown horrors? He looked at him and he said, freedom. Freedom. Too many times we see the doors of horror, the doors of doubt, the doors of I can't do, the doors of nobody's going to take my product, the doors of all those negative people that tell you you can't accomplish a thing, your design stinks, your product's no good, you're no good, you don't have the capabilities to do it. My caution and my advice to you is this. If you get to this particular point in the stage of your career and your business, bust through that door. Don't stop. Yes, brace yourself for the problems. Brace yourselves for the difficulties and the losses and the disappointments and everything else that's going to go bad. Brace yourself, but go through the door and take it on. You want to make an impact in your life, in the lives of others, in the career that you take, the business that you start. Make an impact. Identify who you are and what you will always stand for. What are the principles that you live by? Market yourself. Make sure you know who you will become, how you will be different from everyone else that you're going to be competing with. Prepare. Master the fundamentals. Relentless preparation in whatever skill and trade that you have. Own yourself. Own your career. Own what you do. Accountability. You own it. And then commitment. When the hard times come, find a way to bust through that door. And then finally, seek the thrills. If you're not having fun at what you're doing, my goodness, why are you doing it? That's where you want to be. Think you can make it happen. Believe you can make it happen. Go through that door, because when you come through it, you're going to know you can make it happen. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you. I wish you the very best. I am amazed at the amount of change that has been here. I was here 2 years ago. I came on a bad weekend when we played Alabama in football. But I'm glad to be back and to see what we are doing. I am just thrilled at what I saw today in regards to what you're doing in the entrepreneurship, where you're heading from that standpoint. I wish all of you the best. Thank you so much. It's up to you. What do you want to do? I mean,
We have time for just one or two questions.
Anybody? Thoughts? Don't be fearful. It's a door. You just go through it.
You said you went to your CEO. You told him you wanted to resign. He happened to be doing the same thing. What was his reason behind it?
Quite honestly, I think he got fired. But the company had done terrible. I started at the top. What he told me, and I believe, good man, he told me, he said, I'm not able to right the ship. Personally, you all have your opinions. He's a very good guy. I think he got some bad advice. And I think he probably listened to some wrong people. One of the things that you're going to be faced with that situation, you're going to get pressured to do something that you might not be comfortable with. That's where the identification of who you are and who you will become comes in. It's really important. But I think it was just that. He didn't think he could make enough change to right the ship, so to speak. There's no question you have the freedom. You get into big companies, it's hard to move them. We had 25,000 employees. That's a small company, too. You definitely do have the freedoms. You can do what you want. My daughter's trying to open up a yoga shop up in Colorado this summer. And the first thing I told her, I said, how are you going to be different from the rest of the yoga shops that are out there? And she's left brain, really creative. She's got all kinds of new stuff. She's calling it the new namaste kind of thing. But you get to do it. She couldn't do that when she was with the company. They restricted her to what they could do. She wanted to open it up. So you do have the freedom. Now, the bad side of that is along with that freedom that you have, you get all of the stuff that goes with opening a business. The administration, the financial side, the tax side, the legal side, get a commercial permit. Oh my goodness. That part is the difficult part. But I will say this. I've been in both. I was with a $2.5 billion corporation. Currently, I'm with a company that was started by a husband, sales guy, a wife, patent attorney, a best friend, engineer. Family-run businesses are different. And one of the things that I've learned was we all need to understand the limitations of our abilities. I'm not saying I'm trying to limit you and that you don't have potential. I'm just saying that when you are not an expert in something, go get somebody that is. Go get help. That's why your network is extremely important. Get that support system. Talk to people who have done it before. What did you do? How did you do? I do that all the time. You should do the same. Build your network starting today. First time you step into your new job, build the network. You may not see people for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, but you know what? There might be a time where they come back to you and help you out. Build your network. Yes, you get the freedoms, but you also get the stuff that goes with opening your business.
All right. Thank you very much. So,
okay.